Imagine opening your refrigerator today. You grab milk, maybe some deli meat or leftovers from Tuesday. It is easy. It is automatic. But for 99% of human history, that humming white box did not exist. So what did we do? Well, in Ireland, they buried butter in swamps for thousands of years. In ancient Persia, they built massive engineering marvels to create ice in the middle of the scorching desert. And in Rome? They fermented fish guts in the sun until it turned into a liquid gold worth more than perfume. Food spoilage was the original ticking clock. The moment you harvested a crop or killed an animal, the race against bacteria began. Losing that race meant starvation. Today we are going to open the pantry of the past. We are going to look at the ingenious, sometimes gross, and scientifically brilliant ways our ancestors cheated death and invented the foods we still love today. Let's preserve some history. Let's start with the oldest trick in the book. If bacteria need moisture to survive, the easiest solution is to simply get rid of the water. We have evidence that cultures in the Middle East were sun-drying foods as far back as 12,000 BC. It is simple thermodynamics. You remove the water, you raise the concentration of sugars and salts, and suddenly bacteria generally cannot grow. This is why we have dates, figs, and jerky. But what if you lived in Northern Europe? The sun isn't exactly reliable there. In the Middle Ages, people had to get creative with still houses, rooms heated by fire specifically to dry out vegetables and herbs because the weather simply wouldn't do it for them. That brings us to the happy accident of smoking. Early cave dwellers likely hung meat near their fires just to keep it away from predators. They realized the meat lasted longer. Why? Because smoke doesn't just dry the meat. It deposits chemicals that act as natural antimicrobials. It also adds flavor, which is why we still crave BBQ today even though we have freezers. But drying was just level 1. To really survive the winter, you needed to master chemistry, salt. Today it is a cheap seasoning. In the ancient world, it was survival, it was money. The Romans knew that salt drew moisture out of food, but they also used it to create something controversial. Let's talk about garum. If you think modern fish sauce is pungent, the Romans were on another level. They would take fish intestines, blood, and salt, and let it ferment in the sun for months. This sounds horrifying to modern ears, but this liquid was the ketchup of the Roman Empire. It was rich in umami. The Roman philosopher Seneca actually hated this stuff, asking, "Do you not realize that garum sociorum, that expensive bloody mass of decayed fish, consumes the stomach with its salted putrefaction?" Yet, despite the smell being so bad that factories had to be built outside city walls, the best stuff fetched incredible prices. While the Romans were fermenting fish, other cultures were fermenting everything else. Fermentation is basically controlled spoilage. You encourage the good bacteria, like lactobacillus, to kill the bad bacteria. In Korea, this became an art form. Kimchi started thousands of years ago as simple salted vegetables. It was essential for surviving winters. Interestingly, that spicy red look we associate with kimchi today, that didn't happen until much later. Red chili peppers were a New World crop, meaning they didn't arrive in Korea until after the Columbian Exchange. Before that, kimchi was not red. And we cannot forget the most popular fermented survival food of all, alcohol. Some anthropologists believe humans settled down from being nomads just to grow barley for beer. In ancient civilizations, beer wasn't just for partying, it was a way to store the calories of grain without it rotting. Okay, drying and salting are great. But what if you wanted ice cream in the middle of a Persian summer in 400 BC? Believe it or not, you could have it. They built the Yakhchal. These massive domed structures in ancient Persia, modern-day Iran, were engineering masterpieces. They used thick, heat-resistant walls to provide incredible insulation. In the winter, they would bring ice from nearby mountains or freeze water in channels during freezing nights. The Yakhchal would store this ice all through the blistering summer. It was effectively a zero-energy refrigerator. If the Persians used the desert, the Irish used the swamp. We need to talk about bog butter. Turf cutters in Ireland keep finding these massive chunks of butter buried deep in peat bogs. Some of them are 3,500 years old. The bogs are cool, low in oxygen, and highly acidic, basically a perfect natural refrigerator. Archaeologists aren't 100% sure if they buried it to preserve it, to hide it from thieves, or as an offering to the gods. But here's the crazy part, people have tried eating it. It turns into a waxy substance called adipose. It apparently tastes like a mix of butter and cheese. For the common person in hotter climates like Africa, there was the Zeer Pot. It is a pot inside a bigger pot with wet sand in the gap. As the water evaporates from the sand, it pulls heat away from the inner pot. It is evaporative cooling physics in action. It can keep vegetables fresh for weeks instead of days. We have talked about ingredients. But what about a complete meal that you could put in your pocket and eat 3 years later? Enter the ultimate survival food of North America, pemmican. Invented by the indigenous peoples of North America, specifically tribes like the Cree, pemmican was the fuel that allowed fur traders and explorers to map the continent. The recipe is deceptively simple, but chemically brilliant. First, you take lean meat, usually bison or elk. You dry it until it is brittle bone dry. You smash it into a powder, then you mix it 50/50 with rendered fat or tallow. The fat coats every particle of meat, sealing it off from oxygen and moisture. Without oxygen and water, bacteria can't grow. You could store this in leather bags for years. It was so valuable that wars were actually fought over it. We eventually figured out better ways. In the 19th century, Nicolas Appert and Louis Pasteur helped us understand germs and invented canning. And finally, mechanical refrigeration changed our lives forever. But when you look at a jar of pickles, a bag of beef jerky, or a tub of yogurt, you aren't just looking at snacks. You are looking at the ancient technologies that allowed human beings to stop wandering, build cities, and survive the impossible. So I have to ask, if you were stranded in the wilderness, which ancient method are you trusting? Are you digging a root cellar, making a Zeer Pot, or are you hoping you find some 3,000-year-old bog butter? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the pantry of the past, please hit that like button. It helps preserve this channel's shelf life. And subscribe for more history you can sink your teeth into. Thanks for watching.